Good evening, Colleen. And that's my phone telling me it's 6 o'clock. So I'm got everything hopefully behaving well here. My internet's been a little finicky today, but hope a signal most of the hour. And so I'm ready to get going here. I am award-winning science fiction author Martin L. Shoemaker, and this is Dictation Trail, Building the Future, in which I dictate chapters of my next novel live before my audience on Zoom. And so that's the premise. Let me start my recording so I can transcribe out of that. Let me get some cables out of the way so I can reach the treadmill controls and get the treadmill started. Hopewell called down, comma. How are you doing, comma, Martinez? Question mark. New line. On the video feed, comma. He answered, comma. I'm fine, dash, dash. Then, comma. Quickly, comma. He lowered himself to the ground and laid out flat. Period. I forgot, period. I have a broken leg, period. I'm stranded down here, period. Help, period, help, period, help, period. New line. Martinez would never make it as an actor. ... New line. So there was the rest of our exercise, period. We had to rescue the supposedly injured teammate. But not falling down, period. Even in Martian gravity, comma, that fall would kill him, period. The simulation must be that he had descended on the slope and then fallen and injured himself, period. New line. Since Hopewell was running the drone, comma, she was in charge of our half of the team, period. Knighton, comma, call the others over, period. Let them know we found him, period. Make sure they stay clear of that decline, comma, but also get videos of it, period. That must be where he went down, period. New line. I did as ordered, comma, while she called down to Martinez, period. How's your oxygen? Question mark. New line. Okay for now, comma, he answered, comma, but the air sled's lost, period. Or ... somewhere on the slope, period. I had anchored a winch myself down, period. The winch let go, semicolon, It was a sudden loss of tension, comma. I lost my balance, comma, and my grip on the sled, period. Sled, comma, winch, comma, and I all slid down, period. I've been calling up for help ever since, period. Glad you all got here while I still had air, period. New line. If I knew Ames, comma, that was close to the truth of the exercise, period. No accident, comma, and no real injuries, comma. But there would be lost gear to salvage as well as the injured man, period. Hope well, comma. Can I take the other drone? Question mark. New line. The drone is yours, comma, Knighton, comma, she answered, period. I activated the controller on my comp, comma, and I called the drone back from its search pattern, period. I adjusted the filters, period. We weren't looking for a suit anymore, comma. We were looking for equipment, period. Different color range, comma, different radio frequency, comma, different temperature, period. With more precision, comma, I found both pieces of equipment easily enough, period. The winch was mostly buried in rock halfway up the slope, period. The air sled was just around a corner of the pile of loose rock from Martinez, period. Easy enough for him to reach if we'd been delayed, period. New line. I tried to stop myself from thinking that way, period. Drill can kill, period. Trying to second guess the real story wouldn't let me do any better on the exercise itself, period. But the reporter in me wanted to know, exclamation point. I could guess, colon, Holmes or Ames had probably accompanied Martinez out here. They used a second winch to lower him down, period. And they'd work together to plant the equipment, period. That made sense, period. And if I looked hard enough, comma, I'd find evidence to back it up, period. New line. But that wasn't our job right now, period. We had to rescue our man, period. That's how we would be evaluated, period. New line. I looked up and saw Donahue and Taylor making their way far south of the decline. Period. At one point, comma, Taylor tethered up as Donahue anchored their winch to lower her down so she could get video of the condition of the slope. Period. That would be useful after we had Martinez safe, comma, and when we went to the bonus prize, comma, the gear, period. Ames would chew us up and spit us out if we let a man virtually die over gear. Without reason, period. It might seem a little harsh, comma, but gear means survival on Mars, period. You abandon it if you have to, comma, but you evaluate the situation first, period. New line. Meanwhile, comma, Reed was walking around near the edge of the chasm, comma, inspecting the ground, period. Is that safe, comma, Reed, question mark? I asked, period. New line. "15 meters, comma," she answered, period. Even if that starts to let go, comma, it'll take time, period. We're going to need to anchor a winch, comma, probably both of them, comma, and let down a line, period. I want to find solid anchor points and make sure nothing's going to come crashing down on Martinez's head, period. New line. "Hey!" exclamation point. "Be careful of my head," period. New line. "We will, comma, Martinez, comma," she answered, period. "I think I found my spot, period." "How's your head, question mark? If I send you down some video, comma, are you in shape to evaluate it, question mark?" New line. There was a pause before Martinez said, comma, "No, comma, I am informed that I am in shock and my judgment is suspect, period. You do not want to rely on me, period. If you try, comma, I may be ordered to go unconscious, period." New line. Reed switched to a private channel, dash, dash. At least we assumed it was private, period. If Ames and Holmes were listening in on that one, comma, there'd been no evidence of it, period. Damn, period, comma, she said, period. I really wanted his opinion on this rock formation, period. If anything goes sliding down, comma, it could turn into a real emergency, period. New line. Then we give ourselves a safety margin, comma, Hopewell said, period. You pick the best spot you can, comma, then step it back another 10 meters, period. We've got enough line for that, period. New line. Makes sense, comma, reads, comma, and then she signaled us to switch back to the public comm, period. New line. I looked over at Donahue and saw that the winch was reeling back in. Period. It looked risky to me, comma, but it was their judgment call, period. They were on the spot, period. And besides, comma, that could have been the way Martinez went down in the first place, period. I'd seen no sign of any other place where a winch might have been anchored to let him down, period. New line. By the time Donahue and Taylor joined our group, comma, Reed had decided on her anchor point, comma, and then stepped it back as Hopewell had suggested, period. We gathered to discuss the plan, period. New line. Hopewell said, comma, well, comma, since Martinez has simulated injuries, dash, dash, new line. Injuries, comma, Donahue interjected, period. New line. Yes, comma, injuries, comma, and since he's reporting being lightheaded, comma, we have to assume he's going to need assistance on rigging up to haul him back up here, period. We have 2 winches, 2 cables, period, both long enough to reach the bottom, period. Let's send someone down on one, comma, and send spare air on the other, period. If he's lightheaded, comma, he may be low on oxygen, period. New line. Again, comma, we knew he had air, comma, but it was the right action to take in the drill, period. New line. I can go down, comma, I said, period. I was a corpsman before I got into the news business, period. I've trained on first aid in a suit longer than any of you, period. New line. No one disagreed, comma. So we got out a harness and I started strapping in. Two people pulling on each line to see if they could pull the anchors loose, comma, or even rock them, period. They were solid, period. When everyone agreed, comma, I started towards the edge of the chasm, period. New line. The winch played out the line behind me, period. New line. In my youth in the Corps, comma, I would have leaped off an edge like this, comma, especially on a winch line, comma, just for fun, period. But Ames liked to remind us that having fun could get you killed on Mars, comma, too, period. Instead, comma, I got down on hands and knees and edged backwards over the slope, period. Our lines were S3, comma, synthetic spider silk, colon, some of the strongest cable by weight we found anywhere in the solar system, period. That didn't mean they couldn't abrade and break, comma, even if well maintained, comma. So the last thing I did was set up the big flat plate with the roller wheel and guided the line into it, period. This would keep the line abrasion to a minimum, period. New line. And then I gave a thumbs up and lowered myself over the edge, semicolon. And in a few moments, comma, the line started rolling out, comma, lowering me down, period. New line. I grew up in the mountains, period. Never much of a fear of heights, comma, even in a tall crevasse like this one, period. So going down was more a matter of boredom than fear, period. I'd been lowering for a couple of minutes when I saw Martinez coming in on a private line, period. I opened it, period. Martinez, comma, Knighton, period. I read you, period. New line. Knighton, comma, Martinez, comma, he answered, period. Have you got your helmet cam on? Question mark. New line. Martinez, comma, Knighton, period. On, not recording, period. Should I be? Question mark. New line. Hell, comma, yes, exclamation point. He answered, period. I want a good record of the strata in that wall, period. I saw something on the way down, comma, and I want as many shots as I can get to confirm it, period. I want everybody up and down that line to record, period. New line. You're pretty demanding for a guy who's CO2 drunk, period. New line. He laughed, period. I don't care, period. You want demanding, question mark? If we don't get that footage, comma, I'm going to demand we come back down and get it again, period. New line. Really, question mark. I looked up the line, comma, and then down at the ground, period. I've got time to wait to fill, period. Tell me what's going on, period. New line. The strata are not what I expect, comma, he answered, period. There's more layers of sedimentary rock than the textbooks say should be there, period. And the nature of them, well, comma, it'd be a 3-week planetology meeting to explain why, comma, but there's evidence of more subsurface water than the experts say there should be in this region, period. This area was wetter than they think, period. New line. Was wetter, question mark. You're not saying anything about now, question mark? New line. Was, comma, he confirmed, period. But maybe now, period. That's why I want more video from more angles, period. When we were setting this thing up, comma, I didn't have many chances to get the video that I wanted, period. I was too busy following Ames's instructions to get down here and plant it safely, period. But I saw some signs, new line. And you didn't tell Ames, question mark? New line. I did, comma, but he seemed uninterested, period. Or even, even not surprised, period. He said, make a note of it, comma, Martinez, comma, but pay attention to the exercise, period. New line. I could see that, period. Ames could be unflappable, period. Quick to critique, comma, slow to praise, comma, always on top of things, period. If something surprised him, comma, it was an observation, comma, but he stayed focused, period. New line. All right, comma, I said, comma, why don't I stream my video down to you? Question mark, new line. I was just about to suggest that, comma, he answered, period, new line. For the rest of my trip down, comma, I heard Martinez talking to himself, dash, dash, well, comma, really, comma, talking to his comp as he made notes on my video stream, period. Most of it was over my head, colon, stratigraphic layers, comma, sedimentation rates, comma, granule size, comma, infusion depth, comma, things like that, period. I'm a reporter, comma. I think I learn new fields quickly, period. Comma, soaking up the vocabulary and the concepts. Ask questions and then more, period. I only wished I could take notes, semicolon, but it was too important to keep an eye on my progress downward, comma, and keep the video turned where I needed, as Martinez gave me instructions to zero in on particular features, period. New line. Finally, dash dash, too soon as far as Martinez was concerned, comma, he wanted more video, dash dash. I stood on the floor of the Chasma and unhooked from the harness, period. On either side were giant, comma, jagged sandstone walls, comma, more than 70 meters high, comma, and over 50 meters apart, period. That left a giant strip of pale blue Martian sky above, comma, but shadows down in here, period. I turned on my lights, comma, and I went to work, period. New line. My corpsman instincts kicked in, comma, so I started with assessment, period. I found Martinez laying on the ground on his side, comma, and I walked over, comma, watching my feet to make sure I didn't trip and make things worse, period. New line. How are you doing, comma, Martinez? Question mark, I said as I bent to check his vital signs on his suit. New line. I'm dry, comma, he said, period. Leg hurts, period. Suddenly, his readouts flipped to simulated that's bad, comma, I said, period. We need to get some fluid and some meds into you, period. New line. I probed his leg, comma, and he cried out in pain when I touched his shin, period. His acting hadn't gotten any better, period. Ow, period. Ooh, period. Ow, ow, period, period, period. New line. All right, comma, I said, comma, this is going to hurt a little, comma, but I want to get you flat, period. I started by unstrapping his air pack and stretching it out over his head, comma, unspose carefully so as not to lose connection, period. When that was done, comma, he could lay on his back with full airflow, comma, so I laid him flat, period. New line. Ow, period. Ow, period. Then I checked his suit's automatic. It was already administering saline, comma, as well as pain relief, comma, according to the readings, period. You can stop owling, comma, I said, period. The suit says you're fine, period. New line. No, I can't, comma, period. I could see his head shaking inside the visor, period. I'm told it's not working, period. Something's wrong with the automatic, period. So, following my instructions, ow, period, ow, period, oh, period, new line. I confirmed on the simulated vitals, colon. The pain meds weren't working, period. He needed something stronger, period. New line. Or maybe, I pulled the sonic scanner up and brought it to the girdle where the automed was underneath, comma, period. I touched it to the hard case, period. Aha, period. Your injector slid out, period. You're not getting any meds or saline, period. New line. And I'm thirsty, comma, Martinez answered, period. I forgot that, period. Ow, period. Ow, period. New line. All right, comma. I knew what to do in this situation, period. If you're careful, comma, You can stick an injector through the elbow gasket and into the arm, period. Do it wrong, comma, and you're patching an air leak as well as a patient, period. But it was the recommended next step, period. New line. I had a small med kit with air, comma, saline, comma, and ampules, comma, in my thigh pouch, period. I pulled those out, comma, set them up. And started unstringing the hose, period. I calibrated the medication feed and the saline, comma, and I prepared to stab Martinez's arm, period. New line. This was the hardest part, period. When I was a corpsman, comma, finding the vein was one of the first things you learned, period. So that was on a bare arm, period. I had to do it through the suit, comma, which meant I had to use the little borescope camera built into the needle and try to find the vein in the little bit of light that came through, period. New line. And that meant wiggling around to get the right angle, period. Hold still, comma, Martinez, period. I'm trying, comma, he answered, period. Am I supposed to be cooperating here, comma, or struggling, question mark, new line. Damn if I know, period. Let me turn this, Suddenly, there was a bubbling at the injection point, semicolon, and just that fast, comma, the needle froze, period. Damn, exclamation point. Suit leak, period. New line. What? Exclamation point. Suddenly Martinez's panic had a feel of realism, period. New line. Don't worry, comma, I said, period. Vacuum rosin has sealed it up already, period. Your air is fine, comma, but my needle's frozen, period. We won't be able to get that out until we change your suit, period. New line. Screw the needle, comma, Martinez said, period. Fine, period. New line. Not according to the exercise, comma, I said, period. You'll still need pain meds and saline, period. New line. I'm fine, exclamation point. Here, comma, I'll get up, dash, dash. I pushed him back down, period. I don't need a hysterical patient, comma, I said, period. Martinez had had all of the necessary health and nutrient therapy growing up, comma, but he was still a Mars kid, period. I outmassed him and outmuscled him, period. New line. All right, comma, he said, period. I'll be a good patient, period. Ow, period. Ow, period. I rose to my feet, period. You just keep saying ow, period. I'll go grab the other kit from the other winch, period. We have to haul it over here anyway, period. New line. The cargo from the other winch was in a large spider silk basket with plastic ribs, period. That would unfold into the patient harness once we were done, period. In the meantime, comma, I opened it and hauled out more medical gear, period. New line. They say the third time's a charm, comma, but I'm a whole lot happier with second, period. Our Martinez started his sailing drip, period. It was harmless enough, period. There were no real meds in it, comma, just virtual, period. And it would show I'd carried out my job, period. At least the second time, period. It would make up for my trouble with the vein the first time, period. New line. Ow, period. Ow, period. New line. You can stop now, comma, I said, period. Your vitals say the pain is subsiding, period. New line. In a softer voice, comma, he said, comma, ow, dot, 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 new line. You should be relaxing, comma, anxiety dropping, period. You could fall asleep, comma, if you felt inclined, period. New line. Not a chance, comma, he said, period. I am not sleeping until I've got all the video I can of the layers of this chasm, period. New line. Why, question mark, I asked, period. What have you found, question mark, new line. It's hard to be sure, comma, Martinez answered, period. It's going to take a lot more investigation, period. I'm going to ask Ames if we can stop and do a thorough survey, period. new line. A survey for what? Question mark, new line. You have to understand, period. I've never been to Earth, period. All of my Earth geology studies are virtual, period. So I could be seeing what I want to see, comma, not what's really there, period. New line. I sighed, comma, trying to calm myself, period. As a reporter, comma, you didn't want to push the source, period. That could make them cautious, semicolon, or worse, comma, that could make them want to tell a bigger story, comma, to exaggerate and make themselves important, period. New line. So when I had my own breathing under control, comma, I said, comma, and what would that be? Question mark, new line. Martinez propped himself up on an elbow, comma, between 30 and 45% might be remnants of a subsurface ocean, period. New line. A little ahead of schedule, comma, 3 minutes, comma, and I'm not recording. So why am I still speaking my punctuation? Question mark, new line. Because it's a really hard habit to break, exclamation point. But I'll try, dot, 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 new line. Period. I hope you agree. So actually, it depends which clock I look at, how soon the cool down is. The computer says it's 6:58, but the treadmill says I've been walking for 57 minutes and I want to do 60 before I hit the cool down, so I can burn just that little extra bit of calories, period. Now stop that. I don't need to keep punctuating. So at 57 minutes, 30 seconds, I've got 2.34 miles and 539 calories. Not bad so far. Oh, I need a quick grab of water. I found my water bottle. I couldn't find it for Monday's talk, so I was drinking LaCroix instead then. I do like LaCroix, but carbonated water just isn't as good for an exercise. All right. $58.30, a minute and a half, and we'll go to cool down and talk about your questions, and maybe talk a little bit about Ulla, Martian Song Book 1, which I announced in my newsletter and my blog this week, as well as social media sites. This book was supposed to be my first experiment with the Kindle Vella program. And then I remembered Ulla was pretty much completely finished and waiting for a home. So I snuck that out on Vella while building the future is still in progress. 30 seconds. Cool down coming. I kind of need it, as you might be able to tell. Getting a little winded here. 15. 10. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right, down to 0% and 1 mile an hour, creeping along. So how are you tonight, Colleen?
Fine, thank you. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Good.
I need to get back in my shape a little bit. I was doing really well in March and April and May, where I was doing 90 minutes a night, 4 and even sometimes 5 nights a week. So you would think that 60 minutes 3 times a week wouldn't be that bad. But I took about a 3-month break.
Yeah,
So,
I understand that.
Yeah. So, but I'm doing okay. Happy to see you join us tonight.
Yeah, we had something on Monday, so I didn't make it.
Yeah.
When the video cut out, you muted yourself for a minute, but then you fixed it. So I
have to learn to remember that when the video cuts out, by default, we're all muted.
Okay.
Those are settings for the meeting, and I can change those, but I don't think I can change them just for me.
Okay.
I think it changes it for everybody. And while I trust you to know to let me talk, I've had experiences in other meetings where after having phones ringing and dogs barking in the background and so on, they set their default settings to be audio off. And so I followed their example and did that. But now I think I explained that night where we lost all the sound after 9 minutes. I probably had a video cut out, and when it came back on, and you weren't with us yet, so you weren't there to get back. And so I was dictating on mute for the rest of that time.
Uh-oh.
At least that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, no, automatic's just fine. I get lots of noise here because we're not far from the railroad.
Now, which railroad is that? Is it freight or passenger or both?
Freight.
Okay. Yeah, that can be loud.
Very loud. It gets worse in the winter. It'll shake the house.
Yeah.
And
I want to say 5 miles west of a freight elevator crossing. And you know, the wind normally blows from the west. So I'm fine. But on those rare cases of an east wind, I will sometimes pick up that freight railroad from 5 miles away.
wow. Well, yeah, that can happen. It depends on, I think an inversion makes it worse. You just cut out again.
Hello, okay, I'm back.
You're back.
Okay. So, all right. So you're aware that Ulla is out there.
Yes, I found it.
You got it?
Yes,
Okay.
I found your post. I'm not sure if I'm signed up for your newsletter or not.
I saw a Colleen somebody at Gmail that signed up on like the 9th, and I didn't know if that was you or not.
It could have been, and I'm not sure because I sometimes fight with my phone.
Yeah. If you could private message me your email address, I can sign you up manually if you're not in there.
I signed up again today.
Okay, you did. All right.
So I'm good.
And that's supposed to be an automated process. If you got a response email saying to confirm, then you should be good.
I'll check.
Okay. So, but Ulla is out there because I suddenly remembered I had it, and I realized a couple of things. First is it was done, ready to go. Second is it's not really long enough to be what we consider a novel these days. It's right on the edge between long novella and really short novel. It's 34,000 words. And so it's something that my agent wasn't really interested in because the publishers were not particularly interested in. They've heard enough variants on the War of the Worlds that they just didn't want another one. And I thought, but I like it. And it is kind of episodic. And so it's a perfect fit for Bella. And I already paid good money for a cover for it. So I had to do something with it. And so I put it up Sunday, learned a few things about publishing. The original source of the story is a little interesting. I'm on Audible. I do a lot of audiobook reading these days. That's entirely Bill Ledbetter's fault because his first book, Level 5, has yet to come out as print or ebook. It only came out as an Audible exclusive audiobook. And I like to support my friends and know what, and particularly because Bill shares a lot of commentation stories we like. So I signed up for Audible so I could listen to Bill's book. And my productivity plummeted after that, and I blame that all on Bill. It's a fantastic book. Level 5 is very good. Level 6 is good, but different. Level 5 is sort of a very global story. Level 6 is global, but it's mostly about the daughter of one. First reads that every month they've got a selection of audiobooks, and you can get a couple of them. I think it's 2, it might be 3 for free, but it's a selection of 8, and you can then buy the others at a discount. And they usually have one science fiction and fantasy, which is, of course, is my preference. Extremely rare that they have 2. There are months, in fact, where I only find one free book I'm really interested in, but they're giving me 2. I gotta get 2, right? They're free. And so one of the books, this goes back a couple years now, one of the free books was Emma by Jane Austen. And I'll admit, I've never read any Austen. I feel like it's a bit of a hole in my literary knowledge, but not enough of a hole that I ever went out and actually filled it. But it's free. Yep. They're going to give me a free book. I can listen to that. And I was maybe a third of the way in, maybe more, and I was waiting for anything to happen. Anything. Because it pretty much consisted of people walking back and forth from one person's house to another and having discussions about their romances and occasionally their business, but mostly their romances. And on the really exciting, they would throw a party and try to hook people up with each other at these parties. And I'm waiting for anything to happen. And at a certain point, I said, anything, come on, give me a Martian invasion, please, let's something. And then I started thinking, well, that's the right part of London for War of the Worlds. And, you know, we've had Jane Austen with zombies. Pride and Prejudice. Stories actually happen. And so I started doing the research on it, and I discovered that Emma was like something in, I want to say 1830s, something like that, maybe 1840s. I also discovered that scholars have great long debates on when War of the Worlds actually happened, because he never said in the story when it happened. It was clear from some hints in the story that it was in the future from when the story was actually published, but how far in the future was unclear. But pretty much no one thought it was any earlier than 1896.
Okay.
So it's not going to line up with Emma at all. I cannot stretch it far enough. I wanted too much to be real. But I also did find one long scholarly article, because there are whole journals and societies devoted to H.G. Wells scholarship, much like there is for Tolkien and other big authors. And I found one long scholarly article that investigated all of the astronomical observations that Wells reported in his book and matched them up to timelines and so on, and confidently asserted with footnotes and math and references that this story happened in 1907.
Okay.
Quite a bit later than anybody else said. But I love the fact that there were footnotes there, that I could set my story in 1907, and if anybody challenged me, I can give them a 5-page paper that proves I'm right.
That'll be good.
That'd be good. And then I started thinking and reading up on Wells's story. I started realizing that, first of all, the title War of the Worlds is pretty misleading, because the astronomers in the story observed 10 launches from Mars, one a night for 10 nights. And second of all, 7 of those 10 landed within a couple of miles of each other around London. Now, that's not a War of the Worlds, that's a war of one city. And in fact, when you dig into the research, Wells just wanted to blow up his neighborhood and have fun doing it. Every place in the book is a place where he lived and worked and walked around every day. Some of the citizens, I mean, almost nobody in the book has a name. It's always the vicar, the constable, and so on. They're all thinly disguised people Wells knew. And he had fun with this. But first of all, that left 3 capsules launched, never explained where they came from. That left a whole bunch of issues that Wells raised that were never explained. Why did they plant these strange white roots as soon as they landed? Where did they come up with a taste for human blood? Because at a point in the story, they're drinking human blood. So much for this idea that they're going to be felled by biological organisms on the planet. And why is it when they're all stalking the streets of London, at the end, when they're all dying, they all keep saying, Ulla, Ulla. What's Ulla? And so I thought, well, I see a lot of things that need explaining here. And I could kind of use Wells's example. So all of the places where my story takes place are within about 3 miles of where I grew up.
Oh, fun.
Now it's almost 60 years before I was born, but it's all places I knew growing up. And so I went to the library and I dug into the history of that area, found things about my area that I'd never known about before. It turns out that in my little rural backwoods nowhere practically neighborhood, that the township, not the, but basically I grew up on the township line. The township across the street was the first jurisdiction anywhere in the state of Michigan to have an African-American official. And his eldest son was the first African-American to graduate from high school in the state of Michigan and go on to college.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, this is a little different from what people would tell me, because people are going to tell me, if I listen to people from like the big city, they're going to tell me how backward and racist my neighborhood is. I leave it to other people to judge whether it's true or not. But it's like, you know, this was pretty progressive in 1880 something to be electing an African-American as township supervisor.
Yes.
And so I start digging into the background and discovering more about this family. Sadly, there was no third generation. From what I can tell, none of their kids had kids, but I turned their eldest son, Eugene, the one who was the graduate, went off to law school and everything, I turned him into my protagonist to view this through, and had him meeting Martians in essentially the area I grew up in.
That
So
sounds
I
like
had
a
fun
fun.
with that, and I ended up with a story that I think is a really good start, but that's why it's book one. I think I reached a pretty good stopping point for that stage of the story. I started the next stage and got no interest from publishers, no interest from my agent or anything. So the next stage has got probably maybe 10,000 words recorded, but it's got no completion of the story yet. So one of the things I want to look at is see how Martian Song, how Ulla does with the audience. And if I start seeing some interest in it, some feedback, then I'll go and pull together my notes that I have on book two and try to finish book two, because book two is where the interesting parts start happening for those who are more into violence. Book one is about cultures meeting. Book two, well, it turns out that one of H.G. Wells's good friends, back when he was writing the story and in that time period, was a guy who decades later would be famous for a speech about, we will fight them in the beaches, we will fight them on the landing pads, we will fight them on the mountains.
Churchill.
We will never give up, we will never surrender. Imagine him as one of the few survivors of a war that destroyed most of London. What's his attitude going to be?
Yep.
And because of a good chunk of Parliament wiped out, he's going to advance in his career a whole lot faster than he did in our timeline. So that's one of the historical personages who will be popping in. Another is a gentleman, and I do not remember his proper name right now, but he was who was very famous in his day for tracking down saboteurs and anarchists who threatened the country. Historians today say he was overzealous on it. Some of his cases should not have stood up, and some of them may have been entrapment or worse. But in his day, he was pretty famous for it, to the point where he eventually was appointed the head of Britain's new Secret Service, which eventually is what we know today as MI6, but there wasn't the naming then. The character who was the first person to go by the nickname M, who of course we later see in James Bond, because it became the code word for the head of MI6 is always M. But this is the M, who has just gone through the experience of torn apart by invaders. So these are two people who are going to have a bit of a mad on about Martians. So I think there's a lot of potential there. And I hope there's enough to encourage me to go on and finish that story, because I have a lot of ideas on that one. So, oh my, I have almost entirely blown past my cool down period. I'm almost 4 minutes over. Why don't I take it to 5 minutes? And maybe I probably won't. Man, you burn calories so fast at the high speed and the high acceleration. I burn at 3 miles an hour and 15%, assuming these instruments are accurate, because what do you expect for a $600 treadmill? But at least relatively speaking, I burn 13 calories a minute. At 1 mile an hour at 0%, it's like 4 or 5.
Yep.
So I probably am not going to hit 600 here, but I'm really close. I'm at 79 minutes, 38 seconds, and 594 calories. So get ready to take my picture to record this. 48, 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, snap, 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 snap. Not too bad. I didn't make 600, but 594 and 2.78 miles. And I'm done. Stop that there. All right. So, oh man, need some water there. So now comes the fun part. I've gotten to a point now where I can produce the video and have it up on YouTube in just about an hour, which is pretty good then. When I started a week and more ago, it was taking 5 hours. And no offense to you, you're a lovely audience, but I do not need to put 5 hours of production into a 1 hour video that so far half a dozen people are watching. It's just not a productive use of my time.
That's
but
correct.
An hour, I can handle an hour, because what's going to happen is when I close the video, in about, judging from Monday night, in about 7 or 8 minutes, I'll get an email. I'll go and click download, and then I'll jump in the shower.
Oh, great.
And I'll be in the shower for 20 minutes. And when I come out, my video's downloaded. Well, it might be 30 minutes, but the first night I did this and timed it, it was more like 40 minutes, because that was when I was filming in the higher resolution.
Right.
Bigger, takes more time to download, which meant I got started that much later. Whereas now, when I get out of the shower a little after 8, I probably have my video ready for me. And that means I will be getting started on the production after I have some dinner. So call it 8:30, 9 o'clock, and an hour to do the production, because it's mostly I open the last project, delete the last video, drop this video in, line up the end credits so that they hit the end of the video, and push the produce button, and it produces it. And in the meantime, I can basically go do something else. Anything that doesn't slow the computer down, I can go do something else. And in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, the video is produced. Go to YouTube, say upload this. And again, I don't want to interfere with the computer. If I interfere with the computer, it all slows down. But if I go listen to a book or watch TV or something and just ignore it, about an hour after I started, it's up there. And then I can tell the world and get this done in an hour to an hour and a half, as opposed to 5 hours.
Yeah,
I'm getting no sleep at 5 hours.
Yeah, that we don't need HD. It makes everybody look old anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And I am certainly looking odd as it is. If anybody comes in the middle of one of my videos and doesn't know what's going on, it's like, why am I watching this guy talk and his head bobbing up and down? All right.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you. I should let you go so they can start producing my recording.
Thank you.
And I will be back on Friday. And I haven't decided if I'm going to have one on Labor Day or not, because I have another writing project that I may be spending all Labor Day weekend on. But I'll make sure I announce in social media if there is or isn't going to be one on Monday.
That's great. We all appreciate it when you spend more time writing.
Yeah. Well, this is a little bit of a different book. Kevin J. Anderson put out a call for writing books for a bundle for NaNoWriMo. And I've got a writing book that is, I want to say, at least 50% done, maybe 60%. And I want to see if I can have it ready in time to say, Kevin, can you include this one in the bundle? Because he sends that out to a whole bunch of writers. And so this one won't be a fiction book on building models of your stories and using visual models to try to help you look for problems and build a plan for what you're going to do and so on. Because it's actually in software development, that's my area of expertise. I've got now 30 years of software modeling, including more than a dozen years of teaching it. So I am very good at visual models. And my contention with my experience is there's really not a big difference between modeling software and modeling stories. They're both about events that happen in response to things people do and what those events are, so on. So it's an area that I've built up all this expertise on the programming side that I can share on the writing side. So this one won't be.
There we go again.
I'll halt now and see you on Friday.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.